64 boy.
Scratch.
Dressing the culture, I'm adjusting the culture, huh? Adjusting the culture, I'm adjusting the culture, huh? Dressing the culture, I'm adjusting the culture, huh? Dressing the culture, I'm adjusting the culture. We gon' talk about it. Come adjust the culture, we gon' talk about it. Come adjust the culture, we gon' talk about it. Come adjust the culture, we gon' talk about it. Come and adjust the culture, huh? Brick by brick, you get your boy Big Wall, and you already know what it is. You already know the vibes, what type of time we on. Today, we got a good one, man. Y'all already know on this platform, we like to talk to people who, really put their stamp on the culture. You know what I mean? And today's guest is exactly that. We got the editor, writer, photographer, publicist, somebody who has been putting in work for over 2 decades. You know what I'm talking about? Grinding, hustling, doing what they do to put their imprint on the culture. And, it's no time like the present to talk to them, especially with the climate of the game. We got so many different people trying to make it in this industry and not seeing or having good people, to help them and guide them in the culture. And today's guest has been doing that for so long, you know what I mean? So we had to have her come through the culture, talk to the game, and give her a point of view. We got the one. We got the only. We got Bernadette Giacomazzo in the building. Welcome to Address the Culture.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Big Wall. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Look, no problem. Like, you're going to get your flowers today because, like,
I appreciate that.
We both know in this game, like, it's hard. You know what I mean? Like, you take 2 steps forward and they seem to knock you 2 steps back or 4 steps back sometimes. You know what I mean? It's not easy making it in this game. So for people like you who has been doing it for so long, it's super dope for you to come through, address the culture, and give us your point of view. For real.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I hope I can enlighten and inform and hopefully entertain somewhere along the way for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with all of that being said, for those who might not know, who is Bernadette Giacomazzo?
Well, as you pointed out, I am an editor. I'm a writer. I'm a photographer. I'm a publicist. Basically, any way you need me, you got me. I've been doing this for more than 2 decades. In addition to my work in hip hop, my work has been featured in People, Teen Vogue, Us Weekly, the Los Angeles Times, the New York Post. You name it, I've been in it. For 10 years, I was the news editor for Go NYC magazine. For about 5 years, I was the executive editor of Latin Trends. And for 2 years, I was the eye candy editor over at XXL, which was really where I got my first quote unquote big break in the hip hop editorial journalism game. I have been featured as well in The Source magazine. I've been featured in Vibe. Currently, I'm over at DX. I was originally at DX beginning in 2018. In 2020, I went over to Blavity, where I stayed for 3 years, and then I returned to DX very recently. And that's where I've been since March of this year. And it's always good to be back in the culture. But in the past as well, I've worked with some of your favorite hip-hop artists, including a lot of artists on the G Unit roster, including Banks, Hot Rod, Kid when he was on the roster, 40 Glock when he was on the roster, Tony Yayo to a lesser extent, obviously 50 Cent. I was in 50 Cent's video for OJ. I played a cop because I was told at the time I have cop energy. Take that as you will. And I also worked with Cool G Rap for his Riches Royalty Respect campaign when he started that comeback. And currently I'm working with a couple of independent hip hop artists. I'm working with an artist out of the Midwest called Mr. 1204. And I'm also working with Hip Hop Gamer, who you know is a Hot 97 personality. here in New York, as well as a well-known gamer, video game player. So all in all, I'm not new to this. I'm true to this, as they say. You wouldn't think of it looking at me that that's what I do. I certainly don't look like your typical hip hop journalist or hip hop person. But I also don't, unlike some people who will remain nameless because I don't need to give them the promo, I don't try to pretend to be something that I'm not. I don't try to speak a language that isn't mine to speak. I am no more or no less than what you see. I do what I do because I love it. I have my voice, and I have a very loud voice and a very distinct voice, and people know me when they see me. And that's really what I attribute all of that to. So that's the summary of me.
Yeah. In that order, man. I love that. I love that because just from what you just said, you didn't allow yourself to be put in no type of box. You know what I mean? You did what drove you. You did what made you happy, and you did what fed the culture. You know what I mean? And that's what it's all about. Now you're a woman who wears many hats. You know what I mean? If you was to say, out of all of the categories, you know, how do you approach them all in order to be successful? We talk about the editing, the photographer, the writing, all of the different people you work with. What's your mind state when you're approaching each of these hats that you put on?
I think, it really depends. You have to look at the sum total of the person that you're reporting on and the story that they're trying to tell. As a journalist, today's journalists unfortunately have a habit of making themselves the story rather than reporting on the story themselves. And while I suppose there's some validity to that approach, it's not one that I personally take. I've never made myself the story, and I don't plan on making myself the story. If I have something to promote of my own, I will promote it, but not at the expense of the story that I'm working on. So you have to look at it and say, who is this person that I'm talking about? What is the story that they want to tell? And how can I best convey it so that everybody can understand it? There are some people that will go into the story and they understand, the history of hip hop. They know about the golden age. They can trace the lineage of today's hip hop stars to the artists back in the 70s and the 80s, the people who broke the ground. How, for example, can you trace Nas to the whole Queensbridge movement and the Juice Crew? Well, that's easy because here's Roxanne Shante, and we grew up together, and Roxanne Shante was part of the Juice Crew, and here we are. And then there are some people who look at the story and they just say, hey, I like Nas. I like his style. I like his flow. I like what he stands for. And that's what they'll take out of the story. And then there are some people that will say, well, I've never heard of Nas. Living under a rock, but I've never heard of Nas. So what will I get out of this story? Maybe I can learn something about him today. So I try to look at the story as just the sum total of its parts and keep it about that. I don't interject my personal opinion. Obviously, I have some preferences more than others. Like most of this hip hop today, I don't listen to. But I'm not the intended audience. I'm not the target audience. They're not talking to me. So I don't have to listen. I feel like I'm listening in on a teenager's conversation. I'm not going to shit on it. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, everything today is garbage, because I don't know, because they're not talking to me. But I am going to say that, like every other genre, hip hop evolves, and that's what we have to keep in mind. So when I am reporting on a newer artist, especially an artist I don't listen to, I just tell the story straight out. Give you the facts, ma'am, and give you nothing else. You don't need to know what I think, for example, of Blueface. I couldn't name a Blueface song if I tried. But you still need to know the story because it's relevant to the culture. So that's really what my job is, and that's how I approach it.
Yeah. That's super dope. And to put on the journalist hat, because nowadays everybody's a journalist. You have a page, you got the equipment, you make the content. You're a journalist. You know what I'm saying? And
no, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. You know what? Having a computer doesn't make you a journalist any more than standing in a garage makes you a car. If that's the case, then I'm a BMW baby. I don't know what else to tell you.
I like that. but that's the mad state, right? You know what I mean? Like with social media just making everybody seem and feel, even down to the music. You got a studio in your house, you get your mic, you get your Pro Tools, you get your look, everything that you need. Now you're an artist, and it kind of waters down the real people who put in the work and dedicate themselves. Because especially like when it comes to stories, people put out stories and they don't even know if it's true or not. You know, it's about the click, it's about the heading. You know what I mean? And if they're wrong, they don't come back.
How well that worked out for her. Ask Tasha K how well that approach worked out for her, because now Cardi B is literally not keeping her foot off her neck. I actually just turned in a story for DX about how Cardi B has just issued a subpoena to Tasha K's husband, and she wants to know about everything from the appliances in that woman's house down to every last penny she's got in her bank accounts. All that because she could not keep Cardi B's name out of her mouth. You know why? Because, if I talk about Cardi B, I get the clicks. And if I get clicks, I get money. And Cardi B's like, well, now I'm going to get money too. Because that's not how journalism works. It's not how journalism has ever worked. You can't just say what you want and get away with it. I was born in Far Rockaway, okay? And I was raised for part of my life in Far Rockaway, which meant that I grew up in New York in the 70s and 80s at a time, in Far Rockaway no less, at a time when that meant something. When that meant, for example, that this was, something that was serious, that this was something that you could, face a consequence for. If you said something out of line in that part of town, you got your shit rocked, to be perfectly frank, because everybody there, they didn't have anything to lose. They only had their name. So if you spoke ill on somebody's name, then that meant that you would have to pay for it in such a way. So when you grow up in that environment, you learn very quickly that there are just certain things you should know better than to say. When I became a journalist, I really learned and studied and did the best practices that I could. And as I went along in the field, I only got better and better. And I learned more and more what I could and couldn't say. And more importantly, how I could say things that I wanted to say. Because it's not just about what you say, it's also how you say it.
Absolutely.
And all of that is important when you're writing a story, when you're reporting on a story. And contrary to popular belief, it's not as easy as it sounds. If it were, everybody would do it and everybody would be successful. But the fact of the matter is they're not. When you Google my name, a lot of stories come up that I've written. Things that go years and years back. I'm talking about even at the beginning of the internet. There's this site that I first wrote for called The Music We Trust that I wrote for back when I was in college in the 90s. Okay. And my full teenage / early 20-year-old voice is on full embarrassing display. And I read it sometimes and I'm like, my God, I was awful. I was a snotty little shit. Oh my, how did I not get my shit rocked? But those were the early days of the internet. And you just, it was the Wild West. You could say what you wanted when you wanted, and that's just what it was. But, as it became the predominant medium, the rules of journalism became, important. That came into play. And that's what we're reporting on. Now, I also want to point out that in journalism, I said earlier that the story mattered. But we always have to be careful too. Just as you can't just say whatever you want about somebody without getting, your shit rocked one way or another. You also don't want to risk becoming the artist's mouthpiece. As journalists, as human beings, we just all have artists that we're fans of. We like some artists more than we like others. And it's only natural that in our writing, eventually you'll figure out, well, hey, this person seems to like that artist more than the other because of the way she writes about him or her. So when you're a fan of an artist, for example, or when you like their music, you sometimes run into this risk of, well, I don't want to report anything negative about them. Or, how could they do that? To give you an example that's removed from me, R. Kelly. There are a lot of people who are fans of R. Kelly. There are a lot of people who like his music. There are a lot of people, and for what it's worth, removed from everything else, he did make some very good music. He did make songs that people remember. And, you know, the truth of the matter is, when the allegations started coming out, when, you know, the whole campaign to remove him, deplatform him and take him off the platforms and put him in jail started happening, there were a lot of journalists that were very, very, very upset. There were a lot of bloggers that were very, very upset. There were a lot of social media people that were very, very upset. And I get it. Nobody wants to hear that the person that they've looked up to for all these years is a predator.
Yeah.
But your commitment has to be to the story. Your commitment cannot be to be R. Kelly's mouthpiece. Either you're his publicist or you're his journalist. And I say that because I've been both. But as somebody who has been both, you cannot do both. If I am reporting on somebody, I cannot represent them in a publicity campaign. The day I start representing somebody in a publicity campaign, I have to inform every single outlet that I've ever worked for or that I am currently working for and say, listen, guys, if something comes up about this artist or this person, I cannot write about it. Because it's a conflict of interest. And you always have to maintain that level of integrity. And that's not something that a lot of people do. But it should be done because there's your conflict.
I love that. That's super dope. You know, the fact when you look at it, like you said, you can't be the journalist and the publicist. You got to pick sides. You know what I mean? And
Correct.
when you're in your journalist mode, you have to focus on the story. You know, and I think a lot of people get lost in the sauce when we talk about that. And that's kind of crazy because it leads me into my next question. When we talk about the journalists and the publicists, you've done them both at a high level. You know what I mean? Now, we're taking off the journalist hat. We're going to put on the publicist hat. On that side of the coin, first of all, tell people what a publicist does. Because a lot of people get it misconstrued. You know, they think here publicists, they think you're supposed to do some stuff a manager does and an agent does.
Right.
Let's break it down so it can be never needed to be broken down again. What is a publicist?
You know, in the early days when I first started in this industry, there was no internet. The internet was in its very nascent phase. I started out on a dial-up connection, just so we're all clear as to how old I am. Maybe I'm giving away my age, but I don't care because not a lot of people make my age. You know what? Not a lot of people make my age in this industry, and getting older is a privilege and not a right. So I will never accept any kind of shit for how old I am. The fact of the matter is, as I said, I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. And that I survived this long, that says a lot. But I say all this to say that back then, if you didn't know what something was, you had to go to the library, which wasn't always convenient, to look it up. You were not just had that information at the palm of your hand. Today, in the year of our Lord and Savior Beyonce, 2023, with Al Gore's internet all around us, there is literally no reason why you can't fire up ye old Google, plug in a name, and say, oh, well, what does this, that, and the third do? And find out. Well, for the benefit of those who somehow cannot seem to find that old Google and figure out what everything does, a publicist's sole job is to get you media placements. That is it. They are not managing you. They are not financing you. They are not responsible for selling your tickets. They are not responsible for making sure your child support's paid. They don't care about what kind of drama you have with your girlfriend, your wife, your boyfriend, your husband, your mama, your baby daddy, or some combination of all of the above. I'm not your therapist. That costs a hell of a lot more. But the evolution of the publicist... You would be amazed at what you get to hear on a daily basis. The evolution of
That's a fact. 100%.
No, you have no idea, dude. The stories I could tell. But the evolution of publicists in the game today is very different because a lot of publicists also get involved in what's known as branding. Because of the 24-hour news cycle, it used to be that, like, listen, I get my client in XXL. For a month, they're going to be talking about him because he's in XXL. And the album's in XXL. And, you know, when Cool G Rap was in The Source, because it was a print outlet. Oh my God, Cool G Rap is in the source. And for a month, they were talking about Cool G Rap. So that was half the problem. But with the evolution of the 24-hour news cycle, now you're on the source today and you're forgotten tomorrow. So they're getting involved in what's known as branding. So that now involves a lot of social media, a lot of placements of your song in other outlets and in like on TikTok, and getting it in like films and in television, so that you really help develop the sum totality of your brand. To use the example of Cool G Rap, his publicist today would be like, well, let's see to get your song licensed out to this film. Let's see to put your song on TikTok and maybe get a viral dance going on about it. Let's see to get your new album featured here, there, and everywhere, in addition to your typical press placements. But yeah, that is the job of the publicist. So do not ask your publicist to do anything for you but that. And if they decide to do more than that for you, be prepared to write the check, because you don't work for free and neither does she.
Talk your shit. Talk your shit.
No, you know what? In this economy, nobody works for free. Gas, grass, or ass. Nobody rides for free.
Yeah.
So,
That's a fact. So, okay. Now, for those who don't know, if you don't know, rewind this, listen to it a couple times. You know what I mean? So you can understand what it is to be a publicist. Now, when we talk about today's artists, when we move towards being a publicist, what are some do's and some don'ts? When we talk about, you got a client and you bringing them on, and you're representing them and with your publicist hat on. What are some do's and don'ts that you've seen over the years, you know, of some things that you've had to go through just being a publicist?
I will tell you a story that did not have anything to do with me, but had to do with someone who was a colleague of mine. And I'm not going to name names. Suffice it to say that it has to do with a hip-hop legend whose name I have not mentioned here. And at the time, it was when I first started with DX. I was invited to this Legends event that was happening in New York City by his publicist at the time. And she was very excited. She was a dope publicist. She was a Black woman. She was gorgeous. She was smart. She was super learned about the subject matter at hand. She really had a diverse group of press there. So it was me. It wasn't just like me and other hip hop publications. It was like People magazine was there. Time magazine was there. New York Times was there. This woman was really on her shit. She really knew her stuff. And like, I got nothing but respect for her. But when the legend walked in, he walked in with a woman on his arm. And it wasn't the publicist. And the woman was a stereotype of, for lack of a better way of putting it, of a video vixen, of a snow bunny video vixen, if you will. And I looked over at her, at the publicist, and her whole face, like she was smiling, but it was like that really tight smile, like, oh my God, I'm so uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
And I started noticing that tears were in her eyes. And I said, oh, shit, what the hell's going on here? And like, I'm looking and I'm like, okay, awkward. What do I do? Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm not putting this in the hip hop DX story. Absolutely not. Like, no. Yeah, first of all, like, this does not have anything to do with the story at hand. I am here to report on what this legend is doing here at this place in New York City, which had very good food, by the way, and to report about what was going on.
Yeah.
But so I stored in my memory because I have a feeling, I'm a woman before I'm anything else. I have a feeling this is going to come up. Sure enough, I wrote the story. And about 20 minutes later, Trent Clark, who was my editor at the time, who's now over at TMZ Hip Hop, said, he writes me in Slack and he says, we have a problem. I said, what's the problem? He says, the publicist wants to talk to you, not me. She said it's a female thing. And I'm like, okay, well, this is new. So I called her up and I'm like, hey girl, what's up? And she proceeded to cry to me for a good half hour and just basically told me the whole story. Suffice it to say that in the process of working with this artist, things happen. As you know, we were adults. Adults will do what they do in their private time. And she caught feelings, and apparently he didn't. Showing up with that woman. So now I got to go back to Trent. I got to be like, okay, Trent, so this is what happened. Listen, this is off the record. And I told him. He's like, oh, shit, here we go.
Wow.
But she's not the first person that this has happened to, and she will not be the last. It's just a natural thing in this industry that when you work in a creative field, what ends up happening? There's a lot of creative energy. There's a lot of artistic energy. You have people that are very passionate about their art, whatever their art is, be it writing, journalism, photography, publicity, music, production, whatever it is. There's a lot of creative energy. And, you know, with all that creative energy, people are very vulnerable. That combined with the long hours of the industry means that at best there will be a physical affair, and at worst there will be an emotional affair. And I say at best physical and at worst emotional because for some people, not me, but for some people, they can detach the physicality from the emotion, and good on them. For those who can do that, they can handle it, and it is what it is, and you know, you call it a day. For those who can't, and there is an emotional component involved, and an emotional affair happens, now it becomes a whole different ballgame. Inevitably, what ends up happening, whether we like it or we don't, and believe me, I do not, the woman starts getting painted with a certain brush. You know, she's a hoe, she's this, she's that. And it still happens today in 2023. She's a hoe, she's this, she's that, she's the other. The man, of course, either A, walks away scot-free, or B, he gets known for having been associated with that hoe. So he takes a couple of hits. And if God forbid, a child is involved at any point, or there's a family that gets broken up, or any sort of like drama that goes on, even though like it makes great TV. You can watch Zeus all day, every day and watch this shit. But in real life, when you get down to the nitty gritty, when the doors close and the cameras go off, that kind of shit can really mess you up. Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that people really have to learn in this business, which I learned at a very young age, do not shit where you eat. Treat this as a job that it is. Now, if you make friends along the way, you make friends. That's great. But go into this and act like it's a job. That's it. Don't get emotionally involved and don't get physically involved with your subjects. I don't care how cute you think they are. I don't give a shit. There ain't a damn thing that a man can tell you, that a grown man can tell you that you haven't heard before as a grown-ass woman. You have heard every single song and dance. So don't tell me, oh, but he promised me he'd leave his wife. Yeah, how many times have you heard that shit before? And it didn't come from a famous rapper. You didn't believe it then. Why do you believe it now? Come on, man. Yeah. Come on, really? Like, and I say this not even so much for the men, because y'all, respectfully, y'all have it much easier than a woman does. I say this for the women out there because I really, when I'm out of this game and I retire and I mind my business for the rest of my life, I want the women coming up behind me to do much better than I have ever done. And to take this advice and to heed it, because as much as we've tried to change that mentality, we still haven't been able to. We still haven't been able to convince these men that what a woman does on her private time is not have anything to do with her business. It doesn't have anything to do with her ability to do her job. We just, it just can't do it. If God forbid you get out to be known. Look, respectfully, I love her, but look what they did to Kim Osorio. Look how dirty they did Kim Osorio. And that woman was the first ever female editor of The Source. That woman knows hip hop inside and out. But because she got involved, whether physically or otherwise, with men in the game, what was she supposed to do? Was she supposed to get and find a fucking doctor somewhere? I mean, come on. Really? Like that kind of industry, that kind of heady stuff, you're going to do that. So what I learned from that, reading that, and you know, eventually along the way, learning and meeting and working with Kim, I learned along the way, like, hey, draw that big yellow line. Don't talk, don't do, don't say. It's business, and that's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. And while that has served me well, I've seen too many women that it hasn't served well to. And I want it. I want better for them. I want better for the younger women that are coming up behind me. I don't want these women to make the same mistakes that women from my generation and previous did, because they're going to end up on the outs in the end. And I don't want that for them.
Yeah, talk your shit. You know what I mean? We like that around these pods when you come through dropping jewels. You know what I'm talking about? I want to kind of dig into your psyche a little bit,
For sure.
because I see what type of time you on. If you could go back and give younger you some advice, what would you tell yourself?
What you think matters now ain't gonna matter tomorrow, let alone 5 years from now. Because I used to get so torn up. Like, look, let's be real, okay? I'm gonna be real for about 5 minutes. I've been real this whole time, but I'm gonna get into something that doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about. There are people on Twitter that will call me everything but a child of God, that have accused me of doing anything and everything but basically, show up at the Capitol on January 6th. And there are some people that even do that too. Fuck them. But now it's like, at best, I'll be like, girl, like, you got nothing else to talk about besides me. Are you bored? Like, how boring is your life that you have nothing else to talk about but me? And at worst, I will get it shut down in other ways, legally or otherwise. And if you want to call me a Karen for doing that, you're a Karen because you called the cops. You're a Karen because you filed a lawsuit. You're a Karen because you don't take our shit. I don't give a fuck what you call me. You've already called me everything else, But
talk your shit.
That's kind of like the shit that I'm on. But that wasn't me at 25. If, God forbid, somebody said something about me that came out of their mouth sideways, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they're saying that the reason I got a job with G-Unit is because I'm, messing with 50 Cent. Oh my God, I can't believe this. I'm so devastated. You know what? Now at this point, it's like, whatever. Okay, yeah. That's why I got it. That's exactly why. So, okay, sure. What else? Yeah. What else you got for me? Like, at a certain point, like that's the big thing I would tell her. That I would tell 25-year-old me, like, kid, this shit that you're stressing about now ain't going to matter 5 minutes from now, let alone a year from now, let alone 20 years from now. That's just what it is.
Yeah. Talk your shit, man.
I've been talking so much shit. I kind of feel bad, actually.
look. That's what we do. We here to address the culture. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now, look.
Well, I get it. But sometimes, being that raw, as I mentioned at the top of the conversation, I'm from, New York, and I'm from a New York that no longer exists. That meant something when you were from that New York. That meant that, you were you were cut from a different cloth. Today's New Yorker does not think like that. They don't do like that. They're mostly Midwest transplants. And they're a lot softer, I feel, than we were coming up. They don't have the same struggles to deal with that we did. So, and I can appreciate that. But that kind of rawness can be off-putting, especially coming from a woman that looks like me. And while I'm okay with it, I'm also aware of how it can come off sometimes.
But, I mean, that's just who you is. Like you said, you're cut from a different cloth. And that cloth is the fabric of the culture. You know what I mean? It is what it is. Like, that's what it stems from. You got to keep it a stack. You know what I mean? Especially when we talk about certain aspects. And you kind of touched on it, when we talk about just being a woman in the culture. What are some of the things, that, as a woman, that you would say to a young lady coming up in this game, in this climate, trying to reach some of the heights that you've done on such a high level?
Couple things. First and foremost, like I said at the top, don't mix business with pleasure. Keep your business and your personal separate. Don't put your family out there on social media, especially if they're minors, because too many fucking weirdos. Don't put your private business, like if you're having a fight with your man or your woman, because who knows these days, I certainly don't know, and I'm not one to judge. If you're having a fight with your man or your woman, keep it offline. Take it up with your man or your woman and solve it. Don't take your shit online. Nobody online knows my private life. There are people that think I'm a lesbian. There are people that think I'm married with 12 kids. There are people that think I'm married with 12 cats. There are people that think I'm just a crazy cat lady. You're all right and you're all wrong. That's how I look at it, because you don't need to know my business. You don't know my nephew's names. You don't know my niece's name. Two of my nephews are now adults. So if they want to say this is my aunt publicly, then that's fine with me. But insofar as me putting them out there, no, I'm not going to do that. But so that's the first thing. Keep your business and your personal separate. And don't ever get emotional about your private business online. And the next thing I would say, which is just as equally important, is hustle your ass off. This is a business where you can make a lot of money if you hustle your ass off. The reason I wear so many hats is because I have bills to pay, quite frankly. And I've been doing that from the beginning, because, you know, here in New York, you have a day job, you have a night job, and you have a fish fry on the weekends just to pay your mortgage. So but you got to do that no matter where you are, no matter what you do. And today's industry is so good that you can do it from anywhere. You can be where you are. Look at us right now. You are where you are in the Midwest, and I am where I am on the East Coast. And we are talking to one another and having an interview, and both are involved in the industry. That was impossible, you know, all these years ago. There was how many people came from the Midwest to go to Los Angeles? How many people came from the Midwest to go to New York? And how many people came to Miami and to Atlanta and to Houston or to Seattle just to get that music, that career going? Oh, you know, if you were an actor, oh, you had to move to LA, or you had to move to New York. And if you were in LA, it was because you wanted to be in films and television. If you were in New York, it's because you wanted to be on stage. Like, yeah, that's still true to an extent, but you can still get involved in the industry within your local area. So you've got to hustle. You've got to keep going. No matter what, you've got to keep going. And most importantly, there is nothing wrong with having a regular job, a 9 to 5, if you will, to pay your bills while you're trying to get where you need to be in the industry. Not everybody's meant to own their own business. It's okay not to own your own business. Not everybody's is meant to be a boss. It's cool. Yeah. You can work on that. As long as you're making an honest living and you're not scamming people, or you're not selling your ass, or you're not selling drugs, or you're not doing God knows what with babies, you're fine. You're fine. Flip those fucking burgers at McDonald's. Wait those goddamn tables. Do what you got to do to pay your bills. As long as you're paying your own bills, who gives a fuck what they say? You got to see the vision, not everybody else. Stop looking for external validation. Oh, well, I should have acted like this because that's what I see people on Instagram. Who gives a fuck what people on Instagram are doing? They don't know your life. I'm hardly ever on Instagram. I don't remember the last time I updated my Instagram. And I'm even worse with TikTok. Like, are you kidding me? People don't know what I'm doing on Instagram or TikTok, but then the next thing you know, oh, hey, I saw you there. Why didn't you post it on Instagram? Because, sir, I don't have the fucking time. That's why. Because I'm 45 years old. What the fuck I look like dancing on TikTok? I mean, come on. You got to see the vision. Not anybody. Are you fucking kidding me? Yeah, show me yourself as a baby and show me yourself now. No, work on your own fucking AI shit on your own. I'm not contributing to that. What the fuck is wrong with you? Shit.
Okay, shit. Oh, man, look. Hey, keep it a stack, man. You know what I'm saying? Look, I'm so curious to hear what you got to say about this question, because I've heard so many different people answer it so many different ways. You know what I'm saying? Like, when we talk, I've heard people say that the internet is a gift and a curse. I've heard people say that the internet is the best thing that has happened to the industry. In your viewpoint, looking through your eyes, how do you feel the internet has impacted the industry as a whole?
I think it overall for the better. I think it has democratized the industry. I think that The gatekeepers, as we used to know them, are no longer there. There are no longer like random arbiters of the culture, speaking specifically on the hip hop culture. It used to be that like you had to get through Benzino and you had to get his approval before you got in the source. Now with the right publicist or with just the right street team, the online street team, you can do it. You can get the attention of somebody who writes at the source and you can get your shit on there. Everybody has a fair shot is really what it comes down to. But on the flip side, because everybody has a fair shot, you got to outwork your competition and you got to offer something that your competition doesn't in order to get ahead. You follow what I'm saying? You can't just be like, well, I have a new single out. Who gives a shit? You and everybody else. Please, my neighbor down the block has a new single out. It sucks. Who cares? Who cares? You need to set yourself apart. That's what the internet. There's no such thing as an overnight success, even on the internet. It just doesn't exist. So that's my best answer for it. It's a blessing and it's a curse. It's what you make of it, really. If you make it a blessing, it will be a blessing. If you make it a curse, it will be a curse.
Yeah. What would you like to say to all of your supporters? All of the people who have been with you since you was that 20-year-old kid talking crazy years ago to your journey to where you have been right now. All of the people who have been in your corners. We ain't talking about the haters. We talking about your supporters. What message?
Believe it or not, my haters are my biggest supporters because
they motivate us.
You would never believe like how many people will hate buy my books or hate read my articles. So to all of you, whether you support me or you don't, I say thank you. Thank you for letting me have a voice. Thank you for giving me space. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be in this world that maybe I don't necessarily come from, or maybe I'm not necessarily, born into, if you will, or maybe I don't look the part. Maybe I'm not what you expect, but you gave me that space anyway. You gave me that chance, and I appreciate it. I always appreciate it. And this doesn't just go for my supporters too. It also goes for the outlets that employ me. It goes for the journalists that listen to me and, listen and give my artists a fair chance. It goes for people like you that find me and say, hey, I want to talk to you. I appreciate you because I want to talk to you too. The only way, we're going to grow as people and as a culture is if we support one another. And at the end of the day, on some real shit, stripping aside culture, this, that, music and the industry and this and that, we are all human beings. And we're all, at the end of the day, our job is to just help each other home and find our way home and make that journey as easy for them as possible. So you're on that journey with me, and I appreciate it.
And I appreciate you, man. Shouts out to you, man. Now, I can't let you get up out of here before you tell everybody how they can get in contact with you, if they're trying to, get some consultations, to go a little more in depth on how to navigate through the game, because you have so many tools and so much experiences that you can give to somebody trying to come up in a culture across the board. Now, you can let them know how they can get in contact with you, all your social media, stuff you got coming up if you want to talk about that.
Sure.
Talk your shit.
Well, spelling my name is in this, Bernadette Giacomazzo. You just go to BernadetteGiacomazzo.com. That's my website. You can contact me there. I have Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. On Twitter, I'm BG Writes, WRITES, Stuff, STUFF. On Instagram, I'm BG_takes_pics. And on TikTok, I am Bernadette Giacomazzo. The spelling is there. I'm most often on Twitter, so it's easier to find me there. There's also a link tree where you can find me and you can contact me there. I have 2 books out. Well, 1 book out now that one book I released in February on the cultural history of In Living Color, the show In Living Color. That's on Woman and Littlefield Press. Next month, I'll be dropping a cultural history book on the Golden Girls. I also have a poetry book that I released in December on Nightingale and Sparrow Press. You can read my stuff every day on Hip Hop DX, and find me there. But yeah, you can reach out to me any one of those ways. The easiest way just to find all my socials is to go to BernadetteGiacomazzo.com and click on the social links. I must stress that I do not have any other social media but those three. I don't have Facebook. I don't have Tumblr. I don't have whatever else. So if you see somebody on there with that name, it is not me. If it is not on my website, it is not me. So there you go.
I want to thank you for coming through it. In my opinion, you are the definition of the needle that pushes the culture forward. Your hustle, your mentality, your focus, your purpose, everything that you've given to the game and continue to give to the game is something that's missing. It's a drought on it, in my opinion. And that's why I needed you to come to the culture to voice that so you can continue to motivate. I really appreciate your energy, man, because it's something that's lacking. You know what I'm saying?
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate this interview, and we'll definitely be talking more for sure. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Y'all already know the vibes. Time is something that we can't get back. So again, I appreciate you for coming through and giving me some of yours. Look, man.
That. Love you back. Thank you.
Come on, man. We already locked in, man. Look, y'all already know the vibes. Like I always say, there's some people you know and some people you need to know. And so until next time, it's your boy Big Wall. And like I always say, your culture makes you who you are. So make sure they respect it. We're going to catch you on the next episode. We up out of here.
It's 64, boy.
Scratch.
Dressing the culture. I'm adjusting the culture, huh? Adjusting the culture. I'm adjusting the culture, huh? Adjusting the culture. I'm